Start a Therapy Practice podcast, episode number 90.
Scott Harmon, startatherapypractice.com podcast.
Well, hello there. How in the world are you doing? This is Scott Harmon from startatherapypractice.com, and it's a wonderful day. Now, there's many reasons why it is a wonderful day, but one of those reasons is that I got to speak to Cheri Dotterer. She is an occupational therapist, and she is the Dysgraphia consultant. You can check out her website at dysgraphiaconsultant.com. And I'm going to have links to things that we mentioned here in this episode today over at startatherapypractice.com/90. Now, when I reached out to Cheri, it was a little bit self-serving because I have kids that we see in our clinics that have dysgraphia problems. And I have two specific kids that I'm thinking about that I treat where I'm like, I ought to get Cheri on here and I could ask her all kinds of questions. And then she's got a new book that just came out. So I actually, when I was talking to her, I purchased her book because it was such a new release. It's only been released for a couple days when I was recording this. So I was on there purchasing her book today. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes to purchase her book. So if you're treating kids who have dysgraphia, you have handwriting difficulties, you're going to want to get this book. If not for yourself, at least for the parents of those kids so they can understand what dysgraphia is and what you as a therapist can do to help their child with that difficulty. I do want to mention real quick that I've got a free upcoming webinar about starting your own therapy practice. So go by startatherapypractice.com/webinars and you can sign up for that free upcoming webinar. Also, the Academy of Private Practice is going to be opening soon. To learn more about what the Academy is, go over to startatherapypractice.com/academy and you can see what it is basically in a short phrase is that it's mentoring, it's training, and it's community. And that's kind of a short explanation. It's basically a shortcut to get you started in your own private practice. It's called the Academy of Private Practice. And just a reminder, be sure to connect with me on social media. Facebook and Instagram is where I'm hanging out mostly right now. And my handle is Start a Therapy Practice over there. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your podcast player on your phone. You want to hit subscribe. That way you get the fresh episodes as they come out. And if you'll do me a favor and give me a review over there on that podcast player, I'd really appreciate that. All right, with that, let's get to the interview with Cheri Dotterer. Here we go. Hey, Cheri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me, Scott.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to have you on here because you're in my wheelhouse about talking about dysgraphia and handwriting and kids who have those kinds of problems. We see those types of kids in our clinics. And so when I saw that you have a book coming out, which at the time that we're recording this, you just released this book here just a couple of days ago. And we were talking before we hit record that you're caught in a whirlwind right now, aren't you?
Just a little bit. I don't think I remember too much about Tuesday. I was so exhausted after the book. I call it my book birthday party, my book launch party at one of the local bookstores here in town.
That is excellent. So let's back up just a little bit and let
Sure.
people know when you graduated OT school, and let us know where you graduated from. What did you do after graduation? What bring us up to speed to where you're at right now?
Sure. I'm even going to step back a little bit before that because my adventure in college has not always been occupational therapy. So I'm going to back you up a little bit further than that. When I graduated from high school, I went to Alvernia College, which is now Alvernia University, but Alvernia College in Reading, Pennsylvania, for biochemistry. I thought that I wanted to work in the cancer unit in Fox Chase when I was graduating from high school. As you can see, my thoughts and processes changed from test tubes to people after several years.
Yep, that's good.
And then there was no occupational therapy program in the area at that time. The closest one that I could manage to get to 3 years after I graduated from Alvernia was Misericordia. And at the time, it was called College Misericordia. It is now Misericordia University. Mm. So I graduated from Misericordia with a Bachelor of Science in Occupational Therapy in 1994, 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. 20, yeah, is that right? I think I've added, I think it's wrong because this is 18. So 1994, that feels like just yesterday, though. Then in 2004, I approached Alvernia because they had an occupational therapy program started in the meantime. Hey, I'd like to get an advanced master's. Can I do that? But I can only afford to take one class at a time. So over 5 years, I got my advanced master's degree from Alvernia just as the OTD programs were beginning. And so I was done of school. I was about shot. So I was like, I'm not going for an OTD too.
Yeah. I understand.
So it just didn't happen.
Well, you put your time in, that's going to school while working. That's an accomplishment in itself. And
having 2 children at home.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. Well, kudos to you for that.
Yeah. 2 small children. My son was 4 when I started back for my master's, and he was 11 when I graduated. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now he's 18 and getting ready to head off to his own college.
It goes by fast.
It does. Yes, it does. And my daughter's older than that. She's in grad school. She's already loving her life off on her own.
Yep. Yes, it does go by fast. So when you got your master's, then did that change your career path any?
Yes, it did. I had been working in adult rehab, home care for many, many years, and I had this really strong desire to work in peds. So when I was getting my advanced master's, I was trying to get as many peds hours in as I could in the clinic at the school. And when I graduated, I went cold turkey, started my own private practice with absolutely no understanding of what it looked like to be in a school. How about that for brave?
That is brave. That's trial by fire right there.
That is exactly what that was. Trial by fire. I was able to get into a building that had a really wonderful coda. If it wasn't for that coda, I don't think I would have been able to get myself going. But I still had this burning question. What do I do when? What do I do where? Why do I do this? So all those questions that a new grad or a seasoned therapist that's transitioning, I'm sure that they all get them.
Mm-hmm. So how many years ago was this when you started that adventure?
2009.
Okay.
So 2009 is when I graduated from Alvernia, and I started the business a few months after graduation. And my primary contracts are cyber schools. Do you have cyber schools in Arkansas?
So define a cyber school to make sure I know what you're talking about.
Sure. A cyber school in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, is any school, public school that is done virtually.
Okay. Yeah, we have that. We have that set up here. Yes.
Okay. We also have homeschools, which are not associated directly with a mainstream school system. Mm-hmm. We also have charter schools in Pennsylvania. Some of them are public, some of them are private, some of them are specifically for certain disabilities. Mm-hmm. So we have a very big variety of school that you can attend these days. So my contracts were with cyber schools, plus intermittently throughout the last 10 years, I've worked a couple brick and mortar buildings. And I'll tell you what, that's just not my cup of tea. I prefer that cyber world. Maybe it's coming off of home care for 15 years before that, but I'll tell you what, I really do like the cyber kids.
So paint a picture of what that looks like when you say cyber school and then you're providing services in that setting. What does that look like?
Okay. There are some clinics such as yours that the cyber student might come into the clinic. However, I really wanted to treat the child where they were going to school. I wanted to see what their home look like, see if it needed an adaptive environment, see if it needed whatever kind of atmosphere. So the students that I see are those that really have difficulty leaving the house throughout the day. So I'm traveling. I travel on a Tuesday and a Wednesday about 150 miles each day, going from house to house. Most of my students are an hour. So it's one-on-one for an hour, which really isn't seen a whole lot when you get into that brick and mortar. I don't know how it is with the clinic because you got insurance that gets involved there. But because it's school-based, it's in the IEP, it's all under IDEA. Some of them are a little shorter, but for the most part, I'm seeing my students at an hour a week or an hour every other week. And sometimes it is environmental modifications, but most of the time it is handwriting problems. And one of the things that's really great in the cyber world, working at the home, is you really get a good connection with the parents.
Yes.
Not as much connection with the school. Yes, I am calling into the school and giving them updates, but I really have a really solid connection with every single one of the parents.
Makes a huge difference.
It does, because you know that if the parent is truly invested, they're going to be following through. As a matter of fact, today I got a text message from one of my moms. Her son, we already know, I'm anticipating discharge by the end of the school year. She sent me this absolutely beautifully handwritten, full-page article that he wrote. I was just totally blown away because this kid 3 years ago wouldn't write a sentence, wouldn't write a letter, wouldn't write anything, would run the other way. And now he's just beautiful handwriting.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, Cheri, you mentioned an IP. So I've heard that we probably shouldn't use the term dysgraphia in an IEP. Can you explain why that is?
Yes. The IEP is designed for the educational system. I liken the IEP to that of the care plan when you're in a nursing home or on the inpatient floor in the hospital. But the terminology that you use in an IEP or even a 504 plan needs to be educationally based. There are 11 educational classifications for IEPs. Among them, which gets confusing, is autism. So people really are thinking that they're getting a diagnosis of autism when they have a child with autism-related IEP, but it's really not. It's an educational classification. The terms dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and dyslexia are all specific learning disabilities under IDEA. So dyslexia should really be written as oral expression. Dysgraphia should be written as a disability in written expression, and dyscalculia should be written as a disability in math concept.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, and it's very confusing for a lot of parents and very distressful and frustrating when the school will say, well, we can't do that. But the reason they can't do that is because they aren't really allowed to, because it's a medical diagnosis. So we really need to start educating the public that they need to be emphasizing a disability with written expression, and then really identify the specific areas that are the problem. So really listing out what the disability looks like is much better for the educational setting, because you've got people reading that don't have any medical background.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You know, in my clinic, I can justify the use of that dysgraphia term, but that makes sense in the school setting. That's probably not the best use of that term.
That's correct. That's correct.
So Just we should have started with this maybe, but let's explain what dysgraphia looks like in a school setting. How would you maybe
Sure.
explain that to a teacher or maybe even to a parent so we can use more layman's terms?
Sure. So what does dysgraphia mean? That's one of the first things that they really need to understand is what, if we break up the word and you're looking at its parts, the DYS, dis, means disability, whereas graph means to write. So it's a disability in writing. So really explaining that to the client just to be able to understand what the word means will help with the educational classification, because now they really understand what the word means. It does mean the same thing as written expression. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I was looking for when I was doing my research was, what are the symptoms? So I have a list here. I'm going to read it off so that your listeners can really understand the 18 symptoms. Mm-hmm. So the first one is writing slower than typical students of the same age. So are they writing at the same speed? That inside for the OTs that listen, inside the etch, in the very back of the book, there is a 1-page handout that you can have as a resource that has the delineation of what researchers have decided is typical writing speed. Do you have that in the clinic, Scott?
We do have the etch, although I don't hardly ever use it. I use the THS.
Yeah.
More
I prefer
so.
I prefer the THS, but I really like that handout that's in the back of that.
I'm gonna have to dig that out now that you say that.
Yeah. So if you really are looking at that, having those norms of what the research is saying is great. I have it hanging up right next to my desk here all the time, but it's a little bit too high there to reach up and get at the moment, or I would list some of them. Odd positions for the wrist or the paper. So are they writing with their wrist in a flexion position, or are they writing their wrist in a really funky, odd, contorted place? Or is their paper really not aligned correctly? When you're setting up the paper, how are you setting it up? Are you setting it up that it's on a 45-degree angle with the point of the paper towards their stomach, opposite which hand they're going to write with?
Are you asking or telling?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it depends on the child. For me, if I'm setting them up, mostly I'm just setting them up on a flat surface, although we can put them on an angled surface and maybe even a vertical.
I'm not talking about the surface. I'm talking about the position of the paper. So if they're left-handed, the paper should actually be turned a little bit to the right with the bottom point of the paper at their stomach, where if they're right-handed, it should be turned 45 degrees to the left with the bottom point facing their stomach. And a lot of kids don't realize that they can turn the paper because they've always been told to put it straight in front of them, but the 45-degree angle is permissible.
I see.
But some kids just don't know that they can do that angle, or they turn it the wrong way, and then their wrist gets really funky. Mm-hmm. So symptom number 3, mixing your upper and lower case letters. How many of us see that all the time? Mm-hmm. Inconsistency in forming the letters. How many of us see that all the time? Mm-hmm. Cramping hands or fingers. Irregular letter formation, size, sequencing, and placement. Poor letter organization. Unorganized thought processes when writing paragraphs. Difficulty managing margins. Insufficient pencil pressure. Poor spelling. Intentionally watching their hand write the letters. I think that one was quite interesting. And I've actually seen it happen. I was totally blown away. And it's really been taking a lot to get the student that's doing that one, where he's watching his hand write the letters. It's crazy. Awkward pencil grasp, poor fine motor skills, avoiding writing tasks, letter and number reversals, difficulty with written expression, needed extended time to complete tasks. Some of them are a little bit overlapping, but if you really break them down and really take a look at them, they each have their own unique, what word am I looking for? Attributes. So when you're really looking at extended time, but you're also looking at writing slower than typical students, writing slower than typical students doesn't always mean that they need extended time. Sometimes the extended time is because of processing what they're trying to say rather than the actual speed of their handwriting. So even though it's subtle, there is a difference there.
So explain the difference and maybe even some overlap or correlation between dysgraphia and dyslexia.
Okay. When I created this model that I've put in the book, I really was trying to delineate the difference between reading and writing and what is going on here. And I have a friend who's a reading specialist, and we talked a lot about the fact that there's nothing out there to help people with spelling. And they oftentimes will group spelling under the reading category, but that's not reading, that's writing.
Yeah.
So when I was really looking at this problem, I was delineating it almost like a sensory motor approach. So when you're thinking about reading and decoding, it's the sensory piece where you're bringing it all in. When you're looking at it from a motor standpoint and bringing it back out, that's the writing piece. So reading is decoding, writing is encoding, if you want to use some of the layman's terms that a teacher would use.
Okay.
So decoding, reading, encoding, writing. So I classified the spelling underneath the writing because that's exactly what it is. It's writing. It's written expression. Writing a sentence, it's written expression. Writing a paragraph, it's written expression. When I was looking at the material that is out there, there was really nothing that was under explaining that piece of the written expression very well. I was also looking at it going, how can I as an OT help these kids? Because one of the things that I found in the research is 9 out of 10 students that are struggling with dysgraphia do not qualify for an IEP and do not get support in the classroom, which means that they're not even on an RTI program. RTI is response to intervention. So there's a lot of kids out there that are struggling that just aren't getting support. How do we help them?
So that's
we
the
need
question.
To find a way.
Yeah, that's the question I have for you, especially, we got private practice owners or want to be private practice owners listening. Do you have any suggestions from an outside source in that regard to help these kids, maybe even first just to identify these kids and educate the parents of, hey, here's what's going on from an OT perspective, and here's how I can help you outside of school?
That's exactly the very beginning, is education, awareness, teaching people what the symptoms of dysgraphia are. Really, that's the foundation. Figuring out what it is that you can clearly tell somebody else what it is going to be the very first thing to help them out. So if they can understand what it looks like, what the symptoms are, then from there they can start to break down and create adaptive treatments and interventions to help it out. A lot of the higher level pieces of dysgraphia were ultimately falling into the lap of speech therapists. And I was very concerned about that we were pulling out a little bit too soon, that we were really working on the mechanical, the visual spatial, the motor, the visual memory, not necessarily auditory memory, but that does impact them as well. I felt like we were pulling out and we were missing some of the word formation, sentence formation, and paragraph formation, which are my last three aspects of dysgraphia types. And it was really looking at what can we do as an occupational therapist. And really the summary of it is really teaching the students how to maybe utilize adaptive ways of creating graphic organizers for themselves, creating writing binders, so having resources available for the stuff that they struggle with so that they have a visual cue to look back to. Really getting it to the point where they're taking the physical binder and making it a digital piece by the time that they graduate, and they can be ready for college or career, whatever it is that they're doing after high school, that it's on their phone, that they can access at any time. Right now I have a client that I'm really working with identifying the parts of speech. Not that I'm teaching this child language. He already knows the language, but when he looks at a sentence, he's not looking at it from word to word, and he's missing basically the noun and the verb, and then all the other pieces like the adjectives, the adverbs. So what I'm having him do is I'm having him color code each one of the types of speech, the parts of speech, and we're going over that together. And ultimately what I want him to do then is to step back and be able to create some of the sentences on his own. Because right now he's just struggling with the written expression piece where he knows what he wants to say orally, but he doesn't know how to get it on paper. So a way to move from using a scribe to helping them with it themselves is trying to help them slow down and really acknowledge, did I really put a verb in that sentence or didn't I? So that they can identify the verbs.
I like that tactic.
I say that again.
I like that tactic, and I think that I'm looking at your book here on Amazon, and I think it's going to have some great information. I think this would be a great resource for OTs to have to help inform parents of what's kind of going on and how they can help their child, but also how them as an OT can help their child.
Yes.
Is that
so the purpose of the book, the premise of the book was really for parents and teachers primarily, and then subsequently for the occupational therapist to have a resource to provide to the parents and the teachers. So it is not written specifically for you and I. It's written more for somebody who doesn't have any background from the medical perspective. And there's the center of the book. The second part of the book is all neurological. It's breaking down the different parts of the brain and the sensory and the motor system and trying to relate them back and describe what part is reading, what part is writing, and how they all work together. And really, I think for the first time, somebody has really identified to a parent that reading comprehension, reading fluency, writing comprehension, and writing fluency come from 4 different places in the brain. And sometimes we don't get that connection. You and I are taught, we got expressive aphasia, we've got receptive aphasia. They're coming from Wernicke's Erica and Broca's Erica area. Oh, I can't even talk today. But a parent doesn't really make that connection. And, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was still on.
Okay.
So really taking that step back and giving a parent a resource that's in a language that is available to them was one of my targets. So there's a whole section of the book that really goes through the neuroscience behind reading and the neuroscience behind writing and tries to pull them together and then applies it at the very end of the book with different treatment strategies.
Well, the book is called Handwriting Brain-Body Disconnect, Adaptive Teaching Techniques to Unlock a Child's Dysgraphia for the Classroom and at Home. And it's, like I said, it's a new release. So actually,
Yes.
I just bought it while we're talking right here. I've been multitasking.
Well,
So
thank you.
shame on
Thank you
me.
very much. No, not it's on. It's very new, and people haven't really gotten a chance to read it yet. Even the people that got it on Monday haven't really had a chance to sit down and get through it. I understand that. But one of the things that I've noticed on Amazon, if you look in the teaching materials, the new releases, as with last night, it was number one. It was
saw that.
surpassing all of the other
New releases.
books that are in that area. It was surpassing all of the brand new study guides books for everybody. All the new study guides are coming out. And I really want to emphasize where that has come from. I joined, the publisher that I use is called Author Academy Elite.
Okay, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that too.
Yeah. Shush. You're not being very good there, phone. Okay. Author Academy Elite is situated in Columbus, Ohio. Author Academy is a hybrid publisher. So this is partially self-published, partially published with the guidance of a publisher. He coaches 5 days a week. He's amazing. He will get on the phone, and I will say some calls I've started at 9:30 in the morning, and he is still on the phone at 2:00 in the afternoon coaching people. It's amazing what he has done with this, and he has the patience of a saint. God, he's amazing. His name is Cheri Oberbrunner, KARYOBERBRUNNER.
And so when you started the go ahead.
That's all right. You may go. I was just gonna say more, but no, go ahead.
Now I was curious of the process, and that for people who are interested in maybe going down that path and writing a book, from the time that you contacted and reached out to them, what was not the exact process, maybe an overview, but and then how long that took?
You get an 18-month contract that he will coach you the 5 days a week. And you could start with having absolutely no idea other than a brief concept of what your book is going to be, or they've had people who have already pre-written a book and just need a publisher, and they'll come on board. And what's nice about his product is the ISBN number is the secret. The ISBN on my book can be sold in Barnes & Noble, where if you get a book that's solely on Amazon, that particular ISBN cannot be sold in Barnes & Noble. So one of the things that I was concerned about with the subject here, and the fact that there was not anyone out there really giving a good understanding of what dysgraphia was, I wanted this book to be available in Barnes & Noble and anywhere books are sold. So that is one of the reasons that this particular publisher really appealed to me. I could do a lot of it myself, and I could learn, and I've learned a lot.
That's great.
And he will teach you 18 streams of income. And I'll have to, after the call, give you the link so that you can really go on and see what his webinars are. He has some evergreen webinars that he has put up that share with you a little bit about what these 18 streams of income are. And he will talk about them. So it's amazing. The stuff that he has going on, it's amazing.
That's great.
But the other program that he has is business coaching. So in addition to the 5 days a week, I also am part of his business coaching program. And his business coaching program, you get somebody to review your website, somebody to review your email chain, and all those other pieces. until you kind of tweak it to where you want it to be for a year. So after the 18 months, you can get another year's worth of training, and it's all about growing a business that you started by writing the book.
I see.
Which just blows my mind.
I see.
It still blows my mind.
Cheri, we're going to have to wrap this up here in just a minute, but I did want to ask you, you had mentioned that you might be putting together a handwriting group in your local area this summer. And I'm just curious how you think you might go about that as far as just getting the word out and organizing that. If you could briefly tell us, because I think therapists want to do that, and we have therapists who are school therapists, and they might want something to do this summer and to help some kids out in a similar manner. I'm curious about your thoughts and how you might organize that.
Okay. Well, I think you and I are thinking two different things.
Okay.
But as far as a child's group, I call it Handwriting Club. So Handwriting Club meets for a month at a time, couple days a week, or 3 or 4 days a week, depending on the level and the intensity that the child needs. Sometimes you got a parent who just wants to have the child occupied a couple days a week, so they'll come over, but from like 9 to 11, and you set up a 10-minute session where it's all warm up. It's kind of like a group therapy session where you've got that 10-minute warm up, you've got 15 or 20 minutes of handwriting, you've got a task at the end, you might have a fine motor activity that you're doing that day, and you have a gross motor activity at the end. Now, granted, it's about 2 hours, so you have to be very strategic about developing the program. But if you are very strategic about developing it throughout the month time, if you do it in June or if you do it in August, you might are able to capture when they're not in extended school year and really be able to carry over more of an extended school year, if you see my air quotes going on here, that so that they don't have that lag time and they can keep up with their handwriting for those that are lagging behind.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I'm working on this summer is actually a professional development training program for teachers and therapists. In Pennsylvania, the extended organization that supports the school districts but isn't necessarily part of the school is called intermediate units. I know in every state they call them something different. I don't know what they are called in Arkansas, but the intermediate unit is like that liaison to provide the professional development. It maybe will keep the control of some of the transportation issues. They hire extra therapists that are more specialized. So you might get a feeding therapist in there because not every school needs somebody that's specializing in feeding. You might have that specialty therapist that works there. So what I am working on developing right now is a training program that will be certified by the Pennsylvania Department of Ed, and I want to get it ultimately the U.S. Department of Ed certified so that anybody, no matter what your discipline is, as long as you're school-based, that you have the opportunity to take this. It's all virtual. However, it's going to be about 90 hours of work in an 8-week period to get it finished, because one of the things that we're trying to work on is the collaboration between the teacher and the therapist and helping the other discipline learn what the other person is talking about better. So when how many of us go into a student's classroom and go, well, if you use this paper, you can have them do this, and you kind of like spout off everything so quickly, and the teacher looks at you with like the deer in headlights, and you really don't have a chance to explain what you just said to them, but you know that they didn't get it. this program is designed to help bridge that gap and really look at some of the things that teachers are doing and look at some of the things that OTs are doing and actually put themselves in the opposite role for a moment to really understand what the other person is thinking.
Okay. And so you're going to try to give that seminar this summer.
I am going to try to do one over the summer. It fits better throughout the school year, but not everybody has time throughout the school year. I'm working with the Department of Education right now. We have a little bit more work on getting it approved. It means I didn't do something right in my application, so I have to fix it. As soon as it's approved, I'm going to be launching it. And then at this point, I'm going to roll it out throughout Pennsylvania, and then I'm going to roll it out to the states closest by and keep rolling it out across the country as time goes on. But that all being said, I'm also looking to go out and do one-day seminars throughout the country. So if anybody is interested in having me come out and talk to them, I'm willing to do that.
That's excellent. So what's the best way people can get a hold of you and connect with you?
My website is dysgraphiaconsultant.com. My email is info@dysgraphiaconsultant.com. You can find me on Facebook as Dysgraphia Consultant, on LinkedIn as Cheri Dotterer and Dysgraphia Consultant, and I'm on Instagram too. That's also Dysgraphia Consultant. Kind of fading off on Twitter. Twitter was not liking me too much, so I'm there, but I'm not there, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. The best way is Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram.
Excellent. And I'll put links in the show notes to that. So thanks so much, Cheri, for joining us today.
Thank you. And if you need anything else from me, you know how to find me. It's great talking with you, Scott. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Okay, to check out links to everything that we mentioned in here, be sure to go by startatherapypractice.com/90. Kids who have dysgraphia problems, dyslexia type problems, these are some of my favorite kids to treat because we can make such a difference as therapists. And it's not just that they have the mechanical issue of writing letters or reading. That really contributes to their mindset and really their outlook on life. Kids who have these difficulties often are ridiculed, they often are belittled, and they just are made to feel really bad about themselves. They're very self-conscious because they're not stupid kids, not at all. They're very bright usually. And so they realize how they have a difficulty in that area and they feel bad about it. So it's important that we get this information out there and that we help as many kids as we can. That's why I suggest that you purchase Cheri's book, and I'll put a link in the show notes. It's called Handwriting Brain-Body Disconnect. And you can get it on Amazon. And like Cheri said, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can order it through them or whatever bookstore is in your town. It would be a great resource to have in order to let parents borrow or just give away so they will understand better what's going on with their child and how best to help them. As private practice owners, our first motive is to educate and make clients aware of what the situation is and then how we can help them improve that situation. So before I hop off of here, be sure to go by startatherapypractice.com/webinars and register for my free upcoming webinar. And the Academy of Private Practice is going to open soon. So if you want more information about what that is, startatherapypractice.com/academy. And don't forget, I've got all kinds of free resources and tools over there at startatherapypractice.com. If you've not been over there, I promise you're going to find something that's going to help you be a great therapist or be a great practice owner. If you have any questions, let me know. My email is scott@startatherapypractice.com. And until next time, Godspeed to you and your practice.